Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Psst, hey, do you want to know about WWDC? Then you've come to the right place. This is Bonus Bite by Apple Slice, and it's all about the recent leaks of upcoming features that are expected to be announced at WWDC 2019. This is your warning. If you are unaware of these, you have not heard anything about it, you want to keep it a surprise, you want the event to really have the full impact that they intended to, then please just switch this episode off and tune into the next normal episode that we'll bring. So in case you didn't realise, where was our main episode this week? Well, unfortunately, we fell victim to a beta bug. As you know, Nick and I run the beta software and his end of the audio failed to save correctly. But what we did include in that lost episode are WWDC 2019 leaks. Now, I feel like just out of respect of Apple fans, it's probably best to separate it. So I think as a rule from now, if we have any of these major leaks that appear weeks before or even days before a keynote, I'll try and separate them out in a special bonus episode just to, try and not ruin the fun for anyone. Okay, so you've had your warning. Switch off if you want or continue. Now, over the past couple of weeks, 9to5Mac have just exclusively been releasing and discovering all sorts of things relating to upcoming software announcements that we're expecting in WWDC. Of course, their dastardly duo of Steve Troughton-Smith and G. Rambo. As always, no matter how much Apple seem to double, triple, or quadruple down on security, they keep finding stuff. I kind of feel like Apple should just hire one of them one days because, maybe in like a security position. That seems pretty wise. Okay, so we're going to kick it off with iOS 13. Now, it has been... people have been sort of waiting even since the announcement of the redesigned iPad Pro that there was going to be a laptop-style experience coming for iPad with the next version of iOS 13. Now, as you would have heard when we reviewed our iPad Pro, Nick's like, no, I want to, be happy with my iPad in the now with iOS 12 and don't just, just use it as it's intended to, enjoy the device. And then once iOS 13 rolls out, hey, you've got some new features to play around with. Now, these are heavily involving multitasking and gestures. So there's some evidence of a multiple windows, and by this, a window is described as containing sheets that are attached to an area of the screen. Now, these sheets can be dragged around and stacked on top of the other. You can fling them away to dismiss. It certainly sounds far more like a Mac-like thing, right? And then the undo gesture, obviously, ain't nobody going to want to be shaking their iPad. It's fine to shake your phone to undo, but shaking your iPad's a little bit cumbersome and probably looks a little bit stupid. So apparently there's going to be a 3-finger tap on the keyboard and then you slide left or right to undo or redo. Back in the episode that we unfortunately lost, Nick seems to think that the slide left and right will be a single undo, single redo. I'm leaning towards maybe there'll be an option that you could toggle where the further you scroll left or the further you scroll right, it kind of can go back or forward multiple steps. I've seen and experienced a similar thing to this in Adobe Illustrator Draw and other apps. So yeah, I think at least if you gave the users an option, this pro sort of option, it might, it might help with the workflow, in the sense of you've gone as far as to do a 3-finger tap on the keyboard. So it's like, well, while you're there, if you want to undo, 4 steps back, then hey, if you can do that in a single drag, that'd be pretty handy. New gestures for selecting multiple items. Now, this is really sweet. So while it's fine to, have to tap, click edit or whatever you want and tap and select multiple items and then do your action, it's always just felt like restricted. So obviously with your Mac, I love dragging to select and doing things like that. And they're bringing that sort of aspect of the Mac to the iPad. And we're talking things like dragging with multiple fingers or drawing to do a selection around a group of objects. It sounds really cool. I'm super excited about that. Other things coming to iOS 13, a dark mode, which isn't a surprise. I really did kind of think that when they brought dark mode to Mojave, that they would have rolled it out to iOS kind of in a point update. But maybe Mojave was sort of the testing ground for it. And so they're definitely bringing a dark mode. Again, as listeners and long-term listeners would have heard, since the start of Apple Slice, anytime there's been a mention of dark mode, I've always said, yes, I'd be into it, but if it worked in the sense of like with your Do Not Disturb. So it shifts to a point in night time, well, much like Night Shift, and then the entire UI can switch to dark mode by itself and automatically switch to the regular mode during the day, because at night time, I think that's when it's mostly needed. Ain't nobody want a bright white screen in their face. So if they could do it that way, I'd be super stoked. Safari is now going to preference the desktop version of websites where appropriate. I haven't really come across this issue too much. Apparently, YouTube.com has this issue where it tries to load a mobile version of the site instead of the desktop version. So I feel like it's more going to be related to respecting the size of the viewport, much like how standard, media queries and stuff with responsive websites work. You say, okay, once website is below 900 pixel widths, change these styles to this, and once it gets below 600 and etc. Or whatever the standard breakpoints are. And that is really ultimately how I feel like it should be across any sort of website experience. Like, you don't want a enlarged version of a mobile website. And in terms of people having an actual desktop website and a mobile specific website, those are definitely that used to be like a popular thing to do, but certainly responsive design in websites is the majority. And so if it could just behave like you're saying you've got a larger browser or a smaller browser, then I'm down for that. Font management in settings. This took me by surprise. So I've always kind of wondered about, well, if they're pushing the Pro aspect, particularly the iPad Pro, and creative types and bringing Photoshop and everything, how they're going to manage stuff to do with fonts. Obviously, you've got, say with Adobe programs, you've got Adobe Typekit, but with just the actual OS itself, there didn't really seem to be anything happening in that space. And this can be a particular issue for people, say, if you want to get to editing documents, even, say, a Word document. You've got a particular font that might be on your computer that you created it on, that you've got your heading styles in and everything, and you want to quickly edit it on your iPad or whatever mobile device. But of course, the font ain't there. And particularly if you need to, take that document and send it off there and then, it's not like you can send it back to the desktop, which featured that font, and then send it. So I think that would certainly be handy. I'd love to see how they manage it. Mail is now going to get searchable categories and also more collaboration with third-party document apps. So you've obviously got everything linking to being able to do collaboration and editing with iWork apps, but if they could include things like all your Google Docs and Office and everything, that would be a big win because, let's face it, as handy as the stuff that they do with iWork is, certainly your Microsoft and Google Office products are more popular. A new reminders design. I'm actually really quite intrigued to see this. I've grown to get used to the reminders app, but still sometimes I think it's the way that the cards collapse or might reorder themselves or whatever. And I think it's fine, but I think there is like a clearer way they could do it. Back when I did a bonus bite with iUpdate OS, which was the iOS 12 concept, that concept had a redesigned reminders app, and I loved that approach. So if we saw something like that, I'd be really happy. And that updated reminders app is also going to be reflected on Mac. I'm assuming another Marzipan app. So there you go. Marzipan is definitely seems to be an upcoming theme, and I'll certainly touch on some Marzipan stuff very soon. A new volume indicator, which has been one of the primary gripes with just a lot of users of iOS, particularly with iPhone. There are instances, obviously, where you see the volume up in the corner or whatever, and I really think, if something that's a bit like hidden off to the side or much slimmer would be a very, very welcome change. Improved Hello Siri rejection for unwanted noises. Now, when we discuss this on this episode, which, as I mentioned, cannot be released because we don't have the audio, I have had this issue a little bit with background noise from, say, the kids yelling or whatever, and it might interrupt the Siri command that I'm trying to do. It's not too much of an issue, but if there is just some ways that it could Siri could intelligently, reject or accept certain parts of whatever audio is being processed, that would be great. I certainly don't think it's going to be announced as a feature, like, hey, we made this Siri rejection better, because it's kind of like admitting that it wasn't great beforehand. So I think it'll just come in a public-facing way. It will just come across as, we've made Siri more intelligent, and they won't actually specify how. But yeah, that is seemingly, there's evidence that that is a thing that has been worked on. Okay, that wraps up what they found with iOS 13. Now with macOS, all about that Marzipan. So in the last full episode, we discussed the 4 new Marzipan apps, and I'm super excited about that. And along with this, you've got new APIs, particularly for, you've got your UI kit apps, which are iOS apps, and they're bringing more Mac-style integrations to it. So stuff to do with support for touch bar and the menu, keyboard shortcuts, and multiple windows. That's fantastic. Split view will work. I think that was always going to be the case anyway, but it's a sort of more of a assurance that, yes, it will work regardless. And apparently, I have no idea because I don't develop apps or anything, that to be able to enable Mac support of your iOS app, in Xcode, it's as simple as a checkbox, which is, according to Nick, much the same as what you do when you can say, okay, this app's going to be iPhone only or iPad included or whatever. So that's pretty cool. I like how they're making that part easy for developers. And yes, I'm really feeling like this is, we had the little introduction with Marzipan, whether you were a fan of the apps they introduced or not. My judgment still is that half of them were decent enough and half of them definitely needed work. But that was always a bit of a testing ground anyway. So I definitely feel like there's going to be a shift for this WWDC. macOS Sidecar, a complete, like, this just sort of came out of nowhere. I wasn't even thinking of it or really even wanting it. But now that it looks like it's coming, I'm going to be super excited. So what the hell is Sidecar? Well, basically, it is a new Mac and iPad desktop extension feature. So turn your iPad into another external monitor for your Mac wirelessly. Fantastic. So we've had offerings like this, with certain apps like Luna and all that sort of stuff. And some of them have involved dongles and everything. And this is like a more fully just baked in native feature that'll apparently be as simple as on your Mac. You hover over the green maximize button, and that then gives you options for Sidecar as to how you want to extend that app, how you want to treat the iPad. Like, I'm assuming it might come with the standard, okay, duplicate screens or just create, an extra screen, and then what you want to actually do with that app. And the cool part about this is that, okay, so if you take an app, you might be drawing like actual Photoshop, and then you want to shift that over Sidecar style to the iPad, the iPad still retains its Apple Pencil support. So I still find I'm far more drawn to actual iPad drawing apps, But typically what I would do, say with Illustrator Draw, is do a lot of the work there, bring it to Desktop Illustrator to like finish it off or do text layout or whatever. But hey, if I had like, there's a little bit that I needed to change, rather than having to, flip it all back through Creative Cloud and wait for the syncing and everything, it'd be awesome just to be like, boom, iPad next to the Mac, sidecar style, flip the app over, make the little change with the pencil, erase this, add this, pull the window back, and continue working. Fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to this feature. Other things coming to macOS, more stuff to do with Apple Watch authentication. So currently, obviously, it could automatically unlock your Mac, which I use all the time because I'm wearing my Apple Watch. But seemingly other things that could be able to authenticate, like Apple Pay, which is fantastic. So I have noticed actually in the latest version of macOS that I'm running, there's been a lot more need for me to be touching that Touch ID button to authenticate passwords and everything. So previously it used to sort of be the fact of once I was in the computer and in Safari, and I get to a website and I want to pre-fill the saved password information, I would just have to select it and it would let me go in. And Apple have kind of clamped down on the security factor even more, and now I actually have to verify that with my finger, which I think is cool from a security level. But if all of that was automatically happening just with the Apple Watch and the authentication, it would just take that extra physical step out of it. So that would be really cool. I'm really looking forward to that, if it can do that sort of stuff. A few little extra things coming to macOS. More developer control for feedback styles via Taptics. Nick and I have always spoken about how good Apple's Taptic engine is, so this is cool. Improvements to NFC, updated Core ML, some developer APIs for document scanning features and using the external camera. So like we saw in Mojave, you can there's instances where you can import a photo or whatever from your phone straight to your Mac or straight into a document you're working on your Mac. And it'll automatically open up the camera app. You take the photo and then it automatically brings it back to the Mac, and there's no extra things to tick off, no menus or anything involved. So bringing that functionality to developers and being able to use that in their apps, I think is awesome, because it's definitely a really handy feature. Siri shortcuts on Mac and screen time. So the Mac's definitely there's a bit more parity with this whole what they have on iOS and then what they have on Mac, which is also, funnily enough, iMessage, which has always lacked some features weirdly, is getting screen effects and everything properly for the first time. So that'd be good. And a new Apple ID management panel. So when we spoke about the death of iTunes in the last episode, I'm thinking like, how are they going to sort out this manual syncing of devices or restoring devices if you need to via a cable? Well, if they're talking about a new Apple ID management in the settings on your Mac, then maybe there'll be a section there for being able to manually sync your device. They could put it there and finally actually get rid of iTunes. So yeah, we'll just see what happens there. Lastly, there's just some more general updates with Siri intents, new Siri intents for media playback, search, voice calling, ticketing, message attachments, transportation info like trains, airport gates and seat info. So yeah, they're just expanding what developers will be able to bring into their apps and what you can use Siri for. So that's very welcome. And obviously it won't be a WWDC without AR. Augmented reality it's like a staple thing that they talk about each year, and they're adding more to it, and they definitely really, really believe in it, and I'm always excited to see what they do in this space. So it's been found that they're will be releasing a Swift-only framework for augmented reality with a companion app for developers to help them create AR feature apps, which is really cool. The AR will now be able to detect human poses, and games developers that are creating games using AR will now have support for controllers with touchpads and stereo AR headsets. There's a lot of potential with this AR space. I had mentioned a while ago that I was trying to bring some of that into an app for my workplace, so that's still a big picture goal for me. And if we get to that point, I would definitely love to be able to share that through the Apple Size accounts and just show you this type of tech that Apple really is really interested in and really trying to be at the forefront of, and me using it in a real world sort of industry use scenario. So yeah, exciting stuff on the horizon. Well, that brings us to the end of this WWDC 2019 Leaks Bonus Bite. Apple Size is part of the Ozcast network. You can find us and plenty of other great podcasts at auscastnetwork.com. I'd quickly like to point out our recent sponsor, the SIZZLE. If you haven't heard about this already, then basically it's a daily tech news wrap-up in one easy email that you just get every afternoon. It's fantastic. You don't have to be trawling through different sites or feel like that you're lagging behind. It's all there. It's neatly laid out. It looks fantastic. I enjoy it. Nick enjoys it. And you can enjoy it too. Please check it out at thesizzle.com.au/slice to trial it today. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to Apple Size, please search in your player and leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app. We've been getting some more reviews recently, very positive, loving what people have to say. So thanks everyone for listening and definitely appreciate the feedback. And applesize.com.au is where everything is at. So, did I ruin anything for you? Well, possibly not, because this information is out there anyway. But yeah, I'm still super excited for WWDC. So I'd love to see how Apple pitch some of these features. What are these iOS 13 windows going to look like? How fluid is the sidecar experience going to be? Yeah, a lot to ponder about, a lot to get excited about. So yeah, we'll have our regular episode next week for you guys. Beta bugs aside, we'll be charging forth as normal and happy to talk tech with you. So catch you later.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.